you ever looked at a huge goal, a massive dream, and just felt completely paralyzed? Like you're standing at the bottom of a mountain and the peak is so far away you can't even imagine taking the first step. That feeling of being overwhelmed, it's real, and it can stop us right in our tracks. We think about the finish line, the final product, the ultimate success, and the sheer scale of it all just shuts us down. But what if I told you that the secret to conquering that mountain isn't a giant leap, but a series of tiny, almost unnoticeable steps? Today, I want to share a story that completely changed my perspective on progress and achievement. It's a simple story, but its lesson is incredibly powerful. It's about a man who was tasked with an impossible job, moving a mountain of sand, one grain at a time. Everyone laughed. A mountain of sand? It's absurd, right? The task was so monumental, so laughably huge, that it seemed destined for failure before it even began. Day after day, people would pass by and see him, diligently working, and they'd shake their heads. What's the point? They'd ask, "You'll never finish. You're wasting your life." The man would simply smile, pick up a single grain of sand, and move it. He didn't look at the mountain. He didn't think about the years it would take. His entire world, his entire focus was on that one single grain of sand. He'd pick it up, move it to its new spot, and then, and only then, would he look for the next grain. His task wasn't to move a mountain. His task was to move one grain of sand over and over again. This is where the magic happens. While everyone else was focused on the impossibility of the big picture, he was focused on the possibility of the small action. He wasn't overwhelmed by the mountain because he wasn't trying to move a mountain. He was just moving a grain of sand. It was manageable. It was doable. And every single grain he moved was a small victory, a tiny step forward. Think about your own life. What's your mountain of sand? Is it writing a book? Starting a business? Getting in shape? Learning a new language? We often get so fixated on the book or the business that we forget it's really just a collection of small tasks. A book isn't written. A sentence is. Then another sentence. A business isn't built. One email is sent. One call is made. One product is designed. A marathon isn't run. One step is taken. Then another step. The man in the story understood this profound truth. He broke down the impossible into the possible. He transformed an overwhelming burden into a series of simple, repeatable actions. And what happened over time? Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and months into years. The pile of sand in the new location started to grow. At first, it was barely noticeable. But slowly, steadily, a new mound began to form. And the original mountain, ever so slightly, began to shrink. The people who once laughed started to watch in quiet curiosity, then in grudging respect, and finally, in awe. This is the power of the 1% rule, or what some call atomic habits. The idea isn't to make a massive, life-altering change overnight. The idea is to get just 1% better every single day. 1% seems like nothing, doesn't it? It's like one grain of sand. If you want to get fit, don't commit to 2 hours at the gym every day. Just commit to doing one push-up. Just one. Can you do one push-up? Of course you can. And once you've done one, maybe you'll feel like doing another. Or maybe not. The victory was in doing the one. Tomorrow you do one again. Soon, 1 becomes 2, 2 becomes 5, and before you know it, You have a consistent workout routine. The goal is to make the first step so ridiculously easy that you can't say no. Want to start meditating? Don't try for 30 minutes. Just sit in silence for 60 seconds. Want to learn guitar? Don't try to master a whole song. Just practice one chord for 5 minutes. Want to clean your messy house? Don't think about cleaning the whole house. Just put one dish in the dishwasher. Each tiny action is a vote for the person you want to become. Every grain of sand moved is a confirmation of your identity as a doer, as someone who finishes what they start. It builds momentum. Success, even tiny success, is addictive. It creates a positive feedback loop. You do a small thing, you feel good about it, which makes you more likely to do another small thing. That feeling of being overwhelmed comes from looking too far ahead. It's like driving a car at night. You can only see as far as your headlights, but you can make the whole trip that way. You don't need to see your destination from your starting point. You just need to see the next 200 feet of road. Your one grain of sand is your next 200 feet. Focus only on that. Master that. Then, your headlights will reveal the next 200 feet. The story of the man and the sand isn't really about moving a mountain. It's a metaphor for tackling any great challenge in our lives. It teaches us to respect the power of consistency over intensity. It's not about the one heroic effort that burns you out. It's about the small, daily practice that you can sustain over the long haul. That's where true transformation lies. So, what is your one grain of sand today? What is the smallest possible step you can take toward your big goal? Don't even think about the second step. Just focus on the first one. Write that one sentence. Send that one email. Do that one push-up. Take 60 seconds to breathe. Move your first grain of sand. And then, tomorrow, do it again. Because mountains are not moved by giant leaps. They are moved by the relentless, patient, and powerful act of moving one single grain of sand at a time. Start today. Start small. You'll be amazed at the mountain you can move. Thanks for watching, and if this resonated with you, consider subscribing for more stories and strategies to help you build a better life, one small step at a time. See you in the next one. Have you ever felt that icy grip of fear? That voice in your head that whispers, "You can't do it. You're not good enough." I know that voice. For a long time, it was my constant companion. Today, I want to share a story with you. Not just my story, but a story about how we can all stare fear in the face and say, "Not today." It all started when I was a kid. I was terrified of public speaking. My hands would get sweaty, my heart would pound like a drum solo, and my mind would go completely blank. I remember one specific presentation in middle school. I had practiced for weeks. I knew my topic inside and out. But the moment I stood up in front of the class, all those eyes on me, I froze. The words just wouldn't come out. The silence felt like an eternity, and the quiet laughter from the back of the room felt like a physical blow. I mumbled an apology and sat down, my face burning with shame. That experience cemented a belief in my mind. I was a failure. Fear wasn't just an emotion anymore. It became my identity. This fear started to leak into other areas of my life. I avoided raising my hand in class, even when I knew the answer. I turned down invitations to parties because the thought of making small talk was paralyzing. I chose a college major that I thought would lead to a quiet, behind-the-scenes job, not the one I was actually passionate about. My world became smaller and smaller, a fortress I built to protect myself, but it was really a prison designed by fear. I was living a life dictated by what-ifs. What if I fail? What if they laugh at me? What if I'm not smart enough, talented enough, or brave enough? These questions were the bricks of my prison walls. I was so focused on avoiding pain that I was completely missing out on joy, on opportunity, on life itself. The turning point wasn't some grand cinematic moment. It was a quiet conversation with my grandmother. She was in her 80s, and she had lived a life full of adventure, travel, and incredible stories. One afternoon, I confessed my fears to her, expecting sympathy. Instead, she looked at me with a gentle but firm gaze and said something I'll never forget. She said, "Fear is a reaction. Courage is a decision." That line hit me like a lightning bolt. A reaction versus a decision. I had been living my life in reaction mode, letting fear call all the shots. But what if I could make a different decision? What if I could choose courage, even if I was still terrified? That conversation lit a tiny spark. It wasn't an instant transformation. Courage isn't a switch you flip. It's a muscle you have to build, day by day, one small, scary decision at a time. So I started small. I decided to make one choice every day that scared me. My first challenge, ordering coffee. Sounds silly, right? But for me, the fear of stumbling over my words or the barista judging my order was very real. So I stood in line, my heart doing its usual drum solo, and I rehearsed my order in my head. A medium latte, please. When my turn came, I took a deep breath, made eye contact, and said the words. And guess what? Nothing bad happened. The world didn't end. I got my coffee. It was a tiny victory, but it was mine. The next day, I raised my hand in a lecture. I asked a question. My voice shook a little, but I did it. The professor answered, and the class moved on. Another small victory. I started collecting these small wins. I joined a book club to practice speaking in a small group. I signed up for a beginner's yoga class, even though I was scared of looking clumsy. Each time I stepped out of my comfort zone, the fear was there. It never fully disappeared. But I learned something crucial. Fear and courage can coexist. Being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you do it anyway. The biggest test came a few years later. A dream job opportunity came up. It was a role I had always wanted, but it involved leading team meetings and giving presentations to clients. The old fear roared back to life, louder than ever. "You can't do this," it screamed. "Remember middle school? You're going to freeze. You're going to fail." For a moment, I almost listened. I almost let the opportunity pass me by. But then I thought of my grandmother. I thought of all those small victories I had collected, ordering coffee, asking a question, joining a club. They were my training. This was the main event. I decided to apply. I decided to go to the interview. And when they asked me to prepare a short presentation as part of the final round, I decided I wasn't going to let fear win this time. I practiced like never before, but this time it was different. I wasn't practicing to avoid failure. I was practicing to share my passion. I focused on the message, not on myself. When the day came, I walked into that conference room. My heart was pounding, yes. My hands were a little sweaty, yes. The fear was there, my old companion. But this time I had a new friend with me. Courage. I took a deep breath, smiled, and began. I shared my ideas with genuine enthusiasm. I made eye contact. I answered their questions with confidence. I wasn't just reciting lines. I was having a conversation. When I finished, the room was silent for a moment. But it wasn't the terrible silence of middle school. It was the silence of people who were truly listening. I got the job. Walking out of that building, I felt a sense of freedom I had never known. I hadn't conquered fear. I hadn't eliminated it. I had simply learned to dance with it. I had learned to hear its voice, acknowledge its presence, and then politely tell it to take a back seat because I was the one driving. So, what is the fear that's holding you back? What is the prison you've built for yourself? I want you to know that you hold the key. It starts with one small decision. Choose courage. Make that phone call. Sign up for that class. Speak up in that meeting. Your world will not get bigger by staying inside your comfort zone. Every time you choose courage over comfort, you build that muscle. You collect another small victory. And one day, you will look back and realize you are not the person who freezes in front of a crowd anymore. You're the person who stands up and shares their voice with the world. Fear is a part of the human experience, but it doesn't have to be the director of your life story. You are the director. You are the one who decides what happens next. So, what will you decide? If you're struggling with fear or anxiety, please know you're not alone. Talking to a friend, family member, or a mental health professional can make a world of difference. Your story is worth telling, and your life is worth living to the fullest. Thank you so much for listening to my story today. If this resonated with you, I'd love for you to subscribe and join our community. Let's continue to choose courage together. See you in the next video. Have you ever felt like the more you try to explain yourself, the more misunderstood you become? Or the more you talk, the more things seem to go wrong? It's a frustrating feeling, isn't it? We live in a world that constantly encourages us to speak up, to voice our opinions, to make ourselves heard. But what if I told you that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is to say nothing at all? What if silence was the key to making everything in your life fall into place? Today, I want to share a profound idea with you, one that might go against everything you've been taught. It's the idea that when you learn to stay silent, everything starts to work in your favor. This isn't about being passive or letting people walk all over you. It's about harnessing a quiet inner strength that commands respect and brings clarity to your life. Think about it. How many times have you said something in the heat of the moment and instantly regretted it? How many arguments have escalated because neither person was willing to just be quiet and listen? How much energy have you wasted trying to convince people who were never going to change their minds anyway? Let me tell you a story about a wise old Zen master. He was known throughout the land for his wisdom and his calm demeanor. One day, a brash young man, determined to prove the master was a fraud, came to his monastery. The young man stood before the master and began to insult him, shouting all sorts of horrible things. He called him a fake, a fool, and a charlatan. The master's students were getting angry and wanted to throw the man out. But the master simply sat there, perfectly still, with a gentle smile on his face, listening in complete silence. After the young man had exhausted himself and ran out of insults, he was panting and bewildered. He asked, "Why don't you say anything? Why don't you defend yourself?" The Zen master looked at him kindly and said, "Young man, if someone offers you a gift and you do not accept it, to whom does the gift belong?" The young man was taken aback. "Well, it still belongs to the person who offered it," he stammered. The master smiled and replied, "Exactly. The same is true for your anger and your insults. You have offered them to me, but I have chosen not to accept them. They remain with you." This story perfectly illustrates the power of silence. The master didn't need to argue or defend his honor. His silence was his defense. It was a shield that deflected all the negativity. By not engaging, he didn't give the anger any power. He remained in control, not of the other person, but of himself. And that is the ultimate form of power. So, how can we apply this principle in our own lives? It starts with understanding when to speak and when to be silent. There are 3 key situations where silence is your greatest asset. First, when you are being criticized or unfairly judged. Just like the Zen master, you don't have to accept every negative comment that comes your way. When someone is trying to provoke you or put you down, engaging with them is like adding fuel to a fire. Your silence communicates that you are above the drama. It shows that your self-worth is not dependent on their approval. Instead of reacting emotionally, take a deep breath. Let their words hang in the air and lose their power. Often, the other person will feel foolish when their negativity isn't met with a reaction. You're not just winning the argument. You're rising above it. Second, when you are working towards a big goal. Have you ever been really excited about a new project, a new business idea, or a personal goal, and you told everyone about it? And then what happened? Some people may have been supportive, but others likely filled you with doubt. They might have said, "Are you sure that's a good idea?" Or, "That sounds really hard." Most people fail at that. Their fears and their limitations can seep into your consciousness and kill your motivation. There's actually a psychological reason for this. When you announce your goals, your brain gets a premature sense of satisfaction, as if you've already accomplished them. This reduces your motivation to do the actual hard work. The truly successful people I know often work in silence. They let their results do the talking. So, the next time you have a dream, cherish it. Nurture it in silence. Work on it diligently, quietly, and persistently. Let the world see your success when it's ready, not your plans before they've even begun. Move like a submarine, silent and deep, only surfacing to show the world what you've achieved. And third, when you don't have all the information. How many times have we jumped to conclusions or given advice without fully understanding the situation? Speaking too soon can lead to misunderstandings, hurt feelings, and bad decisions. The wisest people in any room are often the best listeners. They understand that every conversation is an opportunity to learn something new. By staying silent and listening actively, you gather more information, you understand different perspectives, and you can make much more informed decisions. Silence gives you the space to think, to process, and to respond thoughtfully rather than reacting impulsively. It gives you an advantage because while everyone else is busy talking, you are busy observing and learning. Now, I want to be clear. This is not about becoming a mute or suppressing your voice forever. There are absolutely times when you must speak up for yourself, for others, against injustice. The point is not to be silent all the time, but to be silent at the right time. It's about being intentional with your words. Your words have power. They can build people up or tear them down. They can create peace or start wars. When you use them sparingly and wisely, they have more impact. Think of words as a currency. If you spend them recklessly on trivial matters, you'll have none left for when it truly counts. But if you save them, if you invest them wisely, they will yield incredible returns. So, I challenge you to try an experiment. For the next week, practice intentional silence. When you feel the urge to defend yourself in a pointless argument, stop. Take a breath. When you're excited about a new plan, write it down for yourself, but resist the urge to announce it to the world. When you're in a meeting or a conversation, make a conscious effort to listen more than you speak. Pay attention to what happens. You might notice that people start treating you with more respect. You might find that you have more mental clarity and less emotional turmoil. You might find that you are more productive and focused on your goals. You might discover a sense of inner peace and strength that you never knew you had. Remember the saying, "Still waters run deep." Your silence is not emptiness. It is a sign of depth, of contemplation, of strength. It is in that quiet space that you can hear your own intuition, connect with your true self, and orchestrate your life with wisdom and grace. When you stop needing to prove yourself, you become truly powerful. When you stop wasting energy on needless talk, you have more energy to create the life you want. In a world full of noise, be the one who understands the power of the pause. Be the one who listens. Be the one whose actions speak louder than their words. Master the art of silence and watch how everything in your life begins to work, almost like magic. Thank you so much for joining me today. If this message resonated with you, let me know in the comments what you think about the power of silence. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more content to help you live a stronger, more intentional life. Until next time, be well and be wise. Have you ever felt like you're waiting for something? Waiting for the perfect moment, the right opportunity, the stars to align before you take that leap? We've all been there. We tell ourselves, "I'll start my business when I have more money," or "I'll learn that new skill when I have more time," or "I'll chase that dream when I feel more prepared." But what if I told you that the perfect moment is a myth? What if the real magic happens not in waiting, but in starting? Let me tell you a story about a man named Arthur. Arthur wasn't a hero from a storybook. He was just a regular guy, a librarian, surrounded by thousands of stories of adventure, courage, and triumph. He loved these stories. He lived through them, but his own life, it was quiet, predictable, safe. Every evening, he'd close his book, look out his window, and dream of having his own story to tell. He wanted to travel, to see the snow-capped mountains and the turquoise oceans he'd only read about, but he always had an excuse. "Maybe next year," he'd sigh, "when I've saved up a bit more." One rainy Tuesday, an old leather-bound book was returned to the library. It had no title, no author. Curious, Arthur opened it. Inside, all the pages were blank, except for the very first one. In elegant, handwritten script, it said, "This book is filled with the stories you have yet to live. It begins when you do." Arthur stared at the words, then at the endless empty pages that followed. He felt a strange jolt, a mix of excitement and fear. It was as if the book was holding up a mirror to his life full of potential, but completely unwritten. That night, Arthur couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about that blank book. The empty pages weren't a void, they were an invitation. The next morning, something inside him had shifted. He walked into the library, but instead of going to his desk, he went straight to the travel section. He picked up a guide to the Andes Mountains, a place he dreamed of for years. He didn't just read it. He started planning. He looked at flights. He researched hiking trails. He calculated a budget. It wasn't a vague someday anymore. It was a concrete plan. His colleagues were surprised. "Arthur, you're actually going?" they asked. He felt a flicker of his old self, the doubt creeping in. Was this crazy? Was he being reckless? But then he remembered the blank book. His story needed a first chapter. With a deep breath, he booked the flight. It was the most terrifying and exhilarating click of a button in his entire life. He had just written his first sentence. The trip was far from perfect. He got lost. His Spanish was clumsy. He was sore from hiking. But he also saw sunrises that painted the sky in colors he never knew existed. He met people whose kindness transcended language barriers. He stood on a mountain peak, breathless from the climb and the view, and felt more alive than ever before. He wasn't just reading a story. He was living it, page by page. When Arthur returned, he was different. The quiet librarian now had a spark in his eye. He started a travel blog, sharing his experiences. He took a photography class. He started learning salsa dancing. He was filling his blank book, not with grand, epic tales every single day, but with small, meaningful moments. His life was no longer a story he was waiting to read. It was one he was actively writing. Now, why am I telling you Arthur's story? Because we are all Arthur. We all have a blank book sitting in front of us, and we are all waiting for some magical sign to start writing, but the sign is already here. It's the breath in your lungs. It's the beat of your heart. It's this very moment right now. Think about that thing you've been putting off. That passion you've buried under a pile of excuses. That conversation you're afraid to have. What if today was the day you wrote the first sentence? It doesn't have to be a whole chapter. You don't need to book a flight to the Andes today. But maybe you can research it. Maybe you can buy a sketchbook and a pencil. Maybe you can sign up for that free online course. Maybe you can just write down your goal and stick it on your mirror. The fear of starting is real. The fear of failure, the fear of the unknown, it can be paralyzing. We build walls of what if around our dreams. What if I'm not good enough? What if I look foolish? What if I fail? But let me ask you a different what if. What if you succeed? What if it's the best thing you've ever done? What if, years from now, you look back not with regret for the chances you didn't take, but with a library full of rich, vibrant stories that you lived? Procrastination is the thief of time, but it's also the thief of life. It convinces you that later is a better time. But later is not guaranteed. Later becomes never. The only time you truly have is now. This moment, it's not just a tick of the clock, it's a gift. An opportunity. It's the point where potential meets action. Your life is not a dress rehearsal. This is the main performance. You are the author, the director, and the star of your own story. Don't wait for someone to hand you a script. Pick up the pen. The page is blank. The story is yours to write. What will your first line be? Don't let another day, another week, another year pass by while your book of life remains empty. That dream you have, that goal that sets your soul on fire, it's not going to chase you. You have to chase it. And the chase begins with a single step. Today, now. This is your moment. Don't you dare miss it. Thank you so much for watching. If this message resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more content to help you write your best story. I'd love to hear in the comments what first step you're going to take today. Let's inspire each other. See you in the next video.